Au e, ano hui I waho a ka pumehana I loko no nā kānaka ea. It's a bit chilly out there, but we can make inside very warm with our aloha. Hiki no? Oia, no leila e olu olu. E kuiluna kako, for those who can stand, please stand for our pule. E ke akua mana loa mana lani ki e, ke akua ihi, ke akua mana, ke akua aloha. Eia no mākou kaupo e kaua I mua au me ka haa. Olu e ke akua e kalamai I nā hema, no ka mea he kānaka wale no mākou. Our Heavenly Father, all great and powerful, we thank you for this evening, an evening when we can reflect on ka olelo o ke ia aina, ka olelo makua hine, ka olelo I aloha nui ia e nā kupuna a hiki I ke ia la. We can reflect upon the families, the communities, who over the centuries continue to olelo the language of this land, the language that you understand among the languages of this world. We thank you for the panelists who will be sharing some exciting leka mai nā ali'i mai, letters from our ali'i that take us back some 200 years ago, getting into a time machine to see the things that were going on then, and again to look at how they compared to our contemporary times. We ask that you help those who will be presenting, including the interns who we are excited to know that they carry forward the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities to unuhi, to translate our Olelo Hawaii, to make it even more accessible to us here, ma Hawaii nei, I ke au holo oko'a, and the entire world. We are thankful for kumu such as Puakea Nogelmeyer, who over the years has helped the many efforts of Olelo Hawaii, be it Punana Leo, Kayapuni or Kula, and those who have a hand in continuing to see that mauno ka olelo o ke ia aina, ka olelo o nā kupuna. No leila e ke akua, we lift all of these things up to you, that your spirit be present as we learn, as we listen, and as we carry forward ka olelo Hawaii in this February, the month celebrating Olelo Hawaii. And take us home safely at the conclusion to our loved ones. Makaino kau kei ki hiwa hiwa Yesu Christo. Amen.
Aloha ahi ahi kākou. O Jamie Fong, ko uinoa, no Moloka'i mai au, hana wau ma o ka hua o wau ka manakia o ka iwa kilo moku. I'm the manager of this beautiful facility, and what a blessing. Welcome all of you to the Ka'iwa Kilo Moku Hawaiian Cultural Center. Thank you for coming out on this cold and blustery evening to join us. This center was the vision of respected Hawaiian leader and former Kamehameha Schools trustee, Myron Pinky Thompson. For Pinky, culture was the foundation for Hawaiian success, and we continue his dedication to Hawaiian values and his legacy of service to our lahui. This evening's presentation, Letters from the Ali'i, Process and Product, features the work of 3 respected scholars and historians. Dr. Tom Woods, Executive Director of Hawaiian Mission Houses. Dr. Puakea Nogelmeyer, Professor at Kawaihuilani School of Hawaiian Language at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and Executive Director of Aulu. And Dr. Kapali Lyon, Department Chair of Religion at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. They will be joined by Aulu interns, John Masuda, Kaliko Aloha Martin, and Hilina'i Sai Durua. We are so honored to have all of you join us this evening. At this time, to begin the presentation, we welcome Dr. Woods to the podium. Please give a warm aloha to our guest speakers this evening.
Aloha, everyone. So we're waiting for the image to pop up. It's blacked out right now. And Puakea Nogomeyer is going to give the first presentation. So the first half hour or so, we're going to talk about the historical context to give you some idea of what was happening in the kingdom before and during the time in which these letters were being written. And so Puakea, you're up.
Okay. Actually, I think I've been... Okay, now hopefully I can see this well enough, otherwise I'm going to wander out there. And I was asked, we were actually going to just present the project, and then we thought, really to make this make sense, we should frame it with a little bit of history about what preceded these letters, who are the characters who helped shape what they were, and how does it come forward. So I was asked to cover 40 years of Hawaiian history in about 8 minutes. So we were going to speed through, but knowing that you're a sophisticated audience. You know, Captain Cook arrives in 1778. He's not the first guy on board, but he's the first documented one, and is the opening to perpetual contact after that. But by the time these letters appear, there's been 40 years of interaction. There's a generation and a half of interaction. So what I wanted to cover is sort of the place that my interest, especially in a bunch of the letters connected with this project, right? You know what? I can't see that for beans. Can I take this out of this? There you go. Where am I? As long as I can see just what I'm looking at. So settlement, there's, the whole kingdom of Kamehameha is established by 1810, but contact has been in place already for all those years. And then when he dies, the end of the Kapu, 1819, missionaries arrive. The first 20 years is really critical there. I think the interaction is the most dynamic in shaping how things move. And then it moves forward. You're more familiar with the latter part of that, right? So my point is that history kind of gets all gelled in as though Captain Cook arrived, then the missionaries got here and changed the culture and overthrew the kapu, and here we all are. Okay, so projects like this open that up and make you look inside of that sequence. Because actually, Captain Cook comes, and Hawaiians want everything on board that ship. And they want the nails themselves and the planks from which it's made. And they can get all of it, basically. But if you produce enough pigs, or if you bring enough taro, or if you sleep with the right people, you can get anything that you want on that ship. But there were things that you couldn't get. And one of those was writing. They wanted everything that they saw on that ship, and they wanted writing too. Captain Vancouver mentions that it's Kalani Moku and another chief. When he's here in 1795, they're young chiefs. They won't leave the ship. They keep watching the guy who's doing the mapping and the writing. They're fascinated by it. They want it. This is Kamehameha's signature in 1810 on a letter to King George. And he didn't write the letter. And we're not even sure that he wrote, but he wanted his name. That's Kamehameha. It's as close as you could get at the time. Okay, we know that he wanted writing. He set up a school in 1810, 10 years before the missionary company comes, to try and teach his two boys, Kekuo Kalani and Liho Liho. It didn't work. They weren't very good students. But so nothing really gelled. But by 1819, 1820, when the missionaries are headed this way, this is what Hawaiians looked like. They're a rather sophisticated lot, actually. They've had, like I say, 40 years of contact. There's Western clothes flying around. They're eating off of China, some of them. There's a mixed bag. This is some of the women of the time. These are wives of famous chiefs, but they have their own standing. This is it's a drawing from 1819 of Kalani Moku's house. Now notice already the adaptation. There's walls and doors and windows, and things are changing. It's a very adapting society. So before the missionaries get here, they're also introduced to other religions. They've been in religious discussions for 25 years. Vancouver tried to convince Kamehameha to take on Christianity. Kamehameha said, "My God's work. We'll stay with this." It's not until his death that the overthrow happens. So They've learned about other ones. This is actually a baptism of Kalani Moku. It's after the overthrow of the kapu, before the arrival of the missionaries. Long discussion. It's not a casual move, but it also doesn't last. It was baptized Catholic. He becomes Christian or Protestant 6 years later. But the missionaries are allowed to land on a 1-year agreement. Let's see how you are. And in the course of the year, their project is definitely they want to spread Christianity. That's why they came. And so they're allowed to sermonize. And they do. Their agenda is through education and through example, they will spread Christianity. The Hawaiians' agenda is a little different. See, nobody from the time of Cook forward could land on these shores without the approval of the king. And so he gave approval to them to see how it's going. This is Liho Liho, who has now approved them staying. And he only says 1 year, we'll try it out. And he tells them where they'll stay. You be in Kailua, you be on Kauai, you be. So they're placed in the different courts. And the Hawaiian agenda is a little different package. They really like the pono of this group. This is the first group that's come that doesn't either want to get cheap taro or a lot of pigs for a little money, or your daughter, or your land. I mean, most other traders want to make a profit. These guys don't. So that sits well from the beginning. They have a skill set, sewing being one of them. The chiefesses are delighted to have sewers on the islands. The palapala is probably the most embraced. They want that, and that starts right away, and they start to teach right away, reading and writing. But the missionaries don't speak English by then. I mean, they only speak English, they don't speak Hawaiian by then. So they teach the chiefs to read and write in English, in a language they don't understand. But they want writing, it's okay. So some of that history gets kind of dense down, this lovely picture, and it says, you know, they're here. It says at the bottom, she's recommending Christianity. This is supposedly not long after the arrival. But if you look really close, everybody's got books. Because from about 1822, Ka'ahumanu started to issue edicts that when the teaching of Palapala becomes available, you've got to learn it. You will be there. When the school's open, be there. So she became an advocate for Palapala before she became an advocate for Christianity. It's January 1822 when the first Pi'apa is published, or this form of the Pi'apa. And finally, the Hawaiian language is sort of densed down into a set form of rules. That's actually an 8-page fold-over little booklet that would show you how to do. But I mean, how sensible. Pi with a A makes pa. So the written form reflected. Ka'ahumanu, that's her look. She's about 50 at the time. This is 6 months after that system is developed. That's a letter from Ka'ahumanu. Her handwriting is excellent. Of course, she was practicing in English before she could do it in her own. I want to highlight just a couple of points on it. This is, she says, here's my word to you. She's writing to Kamehameha, who is Liho Liho's favorite queen, who goes to England and dies there. And she says, you're there with the long necks. Send more letters. I want hundreds of letters. And then this last line, we want literacy. It will make us wise. And then she actually corrects her own text and says, we want the teaching of literacy, because she's already got it. But to me, this is the signature, and she signs Ka'ahumanu and Tamori. And then she crosses out, because the letter was introducing her brand new husband is Kaumoali'i, by the way. So she crosses out that name and rewrites it, because that's the way. Tamori is how it was written, how it had always been written by the sea captains. So she crosses it out and writes Taumu Ari'i, follows, she's letting go of the received and applying the new method. This is Liho Liho, and is all I want to point out is he's writing this first letter that we have is written to the mission board. It's dated March, and it's signed Kamehameha. His next letter is to someone, or that's the word, and he's saying, oh, we got reading and writing, and we're seeing and hearing the Jehovah, you know, the religion, it's on the way. But he signs it to Mehameha. His next letter that we have is to Kalue Ahuena, and the date on it is actually Velo, o Velo Keia. And he signs it not Kamehameha, but Riho Riho Iolani. This is his last letter. He writes this letter from London. And again, he's using, I want to highlight the 3 points, is the date that he gives isn't July, it's Kamohoi Mua, with an extra W glide. Signs it Iolani. And his message, when he's writing back, it's a 3-page letter, is he says, we've all been sick here, but we've all gotten better. There's only 3 of us left that are still sick. Myself, Kamehamalu, and Kopihe. Kopihe survived. The other 2 did not. That's the last letter from him. But upon his death, when the bodies are brought back, his younger brother is made the king. He's only 12. He's already an able reader and writer in English and can read and write in Hawaiian. And so in his opening speech and taking the throne, he says, mine will be a nation of literacy. The man who can read and write will be my man. He also says the man who is Christian and good. It's a long speech. You'll get to it. But basically, it's that literacy, which had almost been waiting. It's like some of you waited to learn how to use the computer. And once you got it, it opened all new doors. That's what this did. So it starts in the royal courts. The ali'i learn. They move out into the districts. By the 1830s, if you were a konohiki, you were required to provide the land, the building, and the salary for teachers. And if you didn't do that, you weren't a konohiki anymore. But by 1831, Teachers College at Lahaina Luna, 1841, a national public system. Fancy. It's at the Teachers College that the newspapers start up. I've given other lectures on the newspapers. If you don't know enough about them, there's lots of places to look. So newspapers got big. They became national. That's the last one. In 1948, they run from 1834 to 1948. And they become this huge repository, a national repository of knowledge. This is the most incredible thing, was opening this up. And it's this legacy, that big corpus, that allows us to understand the manuscript material, like the letters. If we didn't have that background, some of these letters would be totally unintelligible. So having that reference, and that's what allows us to understand all the docs as well. So my point is that for 100 years, most of this lay dormant. And the only guys who had access to it were treasure hunters. Ta-da, that would be me. And me and a bunch of Hawaiian language teachers. And then about 2000, we start to actually map how much is there. And when we realized that Hawaii had created more written and printed material than the rest of the Pacific together, more printed material than all of the Native Americans in North America, and maybe South America combined, is this incredible, huge cache. And we realized that 95, 99% of the population can't get to it. We set up Aulu. We set up to go translate it because Dwayne Steele said, it's not about language. We were into this for the language. He said, it's about knowledge. And we have to get this information available to everyone. So that started up. We put newspapers online. Archaeologists and data diggers proved it was worthwhile. Today, everybody has access to it. Of course, it's still in Hawaiian. But that, if you don't speak Hawaiian, that's curable. We can fix that. And there's an ever larger growing number of folks who can. There's 25,000 people, they say, that are pretty fluent in Hawaiian. So if you're not, you can still dig around in this stuff. Just make friends with somebody. It works, okay? There are a bunch of online resources now. If you just look up Hawaiian language, these are places where it's available in 2 languages. So things like newpepa.org has all of the original newspapers. Papakilo database has them and has more of a searchable body. Awaiaulu.org, that's who we are, and we guide you toward other projects and whatnot. Newpepa-Hawaii does translated articles at the whim of the blogger. Sea Grant, the IHLRT, has a huge body of collected material in different fields. And the new one is the missionhouses.org that has our whole project tonight. Basically, there is a library of knowledge that's out there. A lot of it's in Hawaiian, but not all of it. We're moving more of it into English. We need a lot of collaboration to make that happen. But it's there, waiting for us. So, get on it. Now, on these, that was my span of history. How's that? That took you up to 1820, right? Hawaiians are ready for it, and they're hungry for it, and as soon as they see it, they grab it. So who is this other bunch of folk that they're dealing with? Who are they getting this from? What about those missionaries? That would be Tom Woods.
Kapali and I were both commiserating after seeing Puakea's slides. His slides were fabulous, weren't they? A design masterpiece.
It wasn't a one-man show.
So who were the missionaries? Well, I think it's important to understand the missionary era in Hawaii lasted from 1820 to 1863. At that time it was POW, the ABCFM, American Board of Commissioners of Foreign Missions, at that time declared that Hawaii was a Christian nation and no longer needed a mission, and that from then on each congregation should support their own minister, and the mission withdrew from Hawaii. The ABCFM formed in 1810 as a Congregationalist organization. 2 years later, they combined with Presbyterians, and so when they sent missionaries to Hawaii, it was Congregationalists and Presbyterians. There were 12 companies that were sent from 1820 to 1848 when the last company was sent. In all, about 185 people came, and that included wives, as well as Hawaiians and Tahitians, which many people don't know about, but you will be hearing more about that in the future, because we have a book that's going to be coming out that will tell you more about those Hawaiians and Tahitians. This, by the way, is Sybil and Hiram Bingham. And Puakea had that slide that talked about the long necks. Look at this slide. You can understand where that came from, right? Look right there, the long necks. Okay, the story of the missionaries is not really complete without talking about Opukaha'ia, or Henry Obukaya, as they call him in New England. Opukaha'ia really was the inspiration for the mission to come to Hawaii. He was born in 1792, and at the age of 10, his family was killed by Hawaiian warriors. 5 years later, he shipped with Captain Caleb Britnall on the Triumph whaler, and he was joined there by a cabin boy named Thomas Hopu, who became his companion and later came back to Hawaii. He ended up at Yale in 1809, and he was taken in, and he was taught to read and write, and he became a bit of a prodigy, and people began sort of, he was passed around between many of the leading minister houses in Connecticut and Massachusetts, and he finally ended up, actually they started the mission school at Cornwall, Connecticut, partly because of Opukaha'ia in 1816. And it was a school that was founded in order to educate Hawaiian and American Indian youths primarily to become missionaries, to go back into their own communities as missionaries. Opukaha'ia died on February 17th, 1818, but before he died, he intended to come back here and start the mission here. He was going to lead the mission. Unfortunately, he got caught up in a typhus epidemic and didn't make it. But before he died, he actually created a grammar, a dictionary, and a spelling book in the Hawaiian language. He began translating the Hawaiian language. And also he began translating the book of Genesis. Unfortunately, all of his work is lost, and it did not survive. Samuel Ruggles, who was a fellow student of his at Cornwall, was with him, and he later began to use, he says in a letter that he was using Opukahaia's methodology in beginning to try to develop the language, but that alphabet never did stick. That's not the alphabet that was finally adopted. But it's really important to understand that Opukahaia was the inspiration for both the mission to come here, and also he was the one who started translating the English language into Hawaiian. So where did their ideas come from? I think that's really significant to understand that. The First Great Awakening happened in 1730 to 1860. It was a revival of flagging interest in religion, primarily Calvinist-driven through the Congregational and Presbyterian churches. They believed that what was called true virtue was self-love, and that you understood that you had God's grace if you were successful. So it was a personal, it was a very, very much selfish and personal-driven sort of belief system. The Second Great Awakening began in 1800 and lasted until about 1830. And this sort of flipped the whole Calvinist idea on its head. Samuel Hopkins was one of the leaders of that school, and he began a school called the New Divinity School. They decided that true virtue really was self-denial and social activism. See how different that is from, everybody says, oh, they were just Calvinists, they were just Puritans. They were very, very different from early Calvinists and certainly from Puritans. So what they were interested in was community and equality versus self-aggrandizement. Okay, so out of this comes the concept that Samuel Hopkins called disinterested benevolence. He said that love of God and neighbor and not the saving of one's soul was important. A true Christian must lose himself in a cause higher than his own salvation. It wasn't only just seeking for grace and trying to discover if you had grace, which was the Calvinist way, but that you had to lose yourself in a cause higher than your own salvation, namely the temporal and eternal well-being of others. So the ABCFM was founded as an action-oriented social reform group. They were evangelical, trying to spread the Christian religion. They believed in equality of people. They were anti-slavery. They advanced women's rights. And they were very much opposed to Indian removal. So disinterested benevolence led to something that's really significant, and it helps you understand why they were more accepted by Hawaiians than because they were so different from the traders that they had been used to in the past. They developed what was called the common stock system, which was in place from 1820 to 1842. And this was driven by Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, which says, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." So the bylaws of the ABCFM actually said, quote, "No missionary or assistant missionary shall engage in any business or transaction whatever for the sake of private gain. Nor shall anyone engage in transactions or employments yielding pecuniary profit without first obtaining the consent of his brethren in the mission. And the profits in all cases shall be placed at the disposal of the mission." Amazing. And on the Brig Thaddeus, when the first group of missionaries were coming over in 1819, the members met and strengthened this with their own resolution. They said, "The property acquired by the members jointly or by the individuals of the body, either by grant, barter, or earnings, shall also be subject to the disposal of the members jointly." No one could make any money by themselves when they came. They got a certain amount of goods that was dispersed equally among the different families. That was in place from 1820 to 1842. Now this is what led to these wonderful records that we have. If they got a donation, they had to record that donation, and that donation was subtracted from what they would have gotten from the ABCFM stores. They couldn't, some families tried to save some extra cream and make some butter and make a little extra money. If Levi Chamberlain found out about that, who was a secular agent, they had to pay that back to the mission. So this donation book records donations from the Ali'i in Honolulu from 1824 to 1833, almost 10 years. And you may not be able to see the entries from there, but it's incredible. So what they have is you have the date over there, you have the donor, you have the article donated, and you have the price, approximate value of that donation. So for instance, if I can read this myself, down on, I think, the 17th, November 17th, 26, Boki gives 2 pints of Indian meal. Underneath that same day, Ka'ahumanu gives 10 small fish. And this goes on. All the Ali'i are giving presents. They're bringing gifts of food to the missionaries. And they're recorded in this book for a 10-year period. Now, what does that say about that relationship? For 10 years, every other day they're bringing in food. This is a really significant thing that is happening. It shows that there's a reciprocal relationship. The Ali'i are getting something from the missionaries, and in return they're giving the missionaries something back. It's beyond simple hospitality. So the era of crisis was already underway when the missionaries arrived. In the 1820s, there were multiple challenges of the kingdom laws on the sex trade that Ka'ahumanu and others instituted in the 1820s. David Malo warned the Ali'i in 1837. He said, "If a big wave comes in, large fishes will come from the dark ocean, from a place unseen. And when they see the small fishes of the shallows, they will devour them. Such is also the case with large animals. They will prey on the smaller ones. Likewise, the ships of the white man have come, and knowledgeable people have arrived from powerful countries which you have never seen before. They know our people are few in number and living in a small country. They will eat us up. Such has always been the case with large countries. The small ones have been taken over throughout the world. Therefore, get your servant ready who will help you when you need him." And this was prophetic because, so this is what Malo was saying in 37, and then of course in 39, the French Laplace incident involving the controversy over the banning of the Catholics, the 1843 Lord George Paulet incident where Hawaii actually lost its sovereignty for 5 months to the British. And then between 1843 and 1846, Wiley was asked to put together a report on how many consular grievances there had been recently. And he was a new minister in the kingdom. And so he counted up the consular grievances. There were 117 grievances from consulars, almost all French, English, and American, for those 3 years. Can you imagine what, this is a constant onslaught that the Ali'i were having to deal with. So, and of course, in 1849, the French came back and sacked Honolulu, causing about estimated $100,000 in damages. So, Malo had said, you need to get a teacher ready. The Ali'i Nui wrote to the ABCFM in 1836. This is one of the letters that's in our collection. And this is a letter from, if you look at the signatures over here, and there's one other partial page even of signatures, these are all the highest Ali'i in the land who have signed this letter. And so what they're asking for is a carpenter, a tailor, a house builder, a cobbler, a wheelwright, a paper maker, a maker of lead printing type, farmers who know the planting and care of cotton and silk and sugar refining, a maker of fabric and carts suitable for heavy work, and a teacher for the chiefs in matters of land comparable to what is done in enlightened lands. So in 1820, William Richards had taught the Maui chiefs about Christianity in the 20s, about Christianity and the significance of law. So he gained Ho'opili's trust and the trust of other high Ali'i on Maui. In 1838, after he returned from the United States, after bringing a half a dozen of his children to be schooled on the mainland, he's asked by Kamehameha III, Ho'opili, and Kina'u to teach the Ali'i about Western constitutions, Western law, and capitalism. He began work as a chaplain, teacher, and translator for the king, and he translated a book called Political Economy, and from that, along with other pieces of books that he also drew from, he wrote No Ke Kalai'aina for a seminar with the Ali'i. So he taught this seminar for the Ali'i between 2 and 4 hours a day for a period of several months. And almost immediately after this ended, June 7th, 1839, the Declaration of Rights and Laws is promulgated. And then in 1840, the Constitution. This is a fulcrum point between the absolute monarchy and the constitutional monarchy. And this is our next project. Puakea and I are going to be working on Noke Kalai'aina. Puakea is going to be translating that, and we're going to be really deep diving into how those classes worked. So because William Richards had won the trust of the Ali'i, he was asked by them, along with Timoteo Ha'alileo, to go to France and England and the United States and ultimately Belgium to gain recognition of the kingdom as a civilized nation. And the letters that they send that are in our collection that have been translated show this amazing affection for one another, this true respect and love. They're very touching. So here's the next episode that is really important to talk about for the collaboration that existed between the Ali'i and the missionaries at this point is how the Bible was translated. And for this, I'm going to ask Kapali Lion to come and discuss some really amazing work that he's done. Thank you.
Besides the ugliness of my
Oi,
PowerPoint.
kau'i puleo.
Oh,
No, just pili kawaha.
Beha.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
A note or two about my PowerPoints, besides not being very beautiful, those of you
Ipu
who've had...
makawaha. Ipu makawaha.
Ke ku makawa.
Yes,
Mekela.
yeah.
Okay,
Malela.
mekeia. Kalamai. Well, you'll note that on a lot of the Hawaiian words do not have okinas and kahakos, and that's not because I don't know my okinas and kahakos, but because every time I do a PowerPoint and put it on somebody else's computer, they come out looking more like Chinese than Hawaiian. So if you see those kinds of mistakes, please forgive, and there's a reason. I want to talk briefly about the making of the Baibala. This is, I think, one of the great stories that's not very well known in Hawaii. Everybody knows that there is a Hawaiian Bible. You see it sometimes in churches. The way that Baibala was put together is a remarkable story. It was, in many ways, the greatest literary project that has ever yet happened here in Hawaii. I have over here on the left, this is Reverend Richards, who is working with a Hebrew text. And as we'll talk about in a minute, the Bible in Hawaiian was not translated in English, from English. Actually, English was forbidden in almost any aspect. No English words used, no English text translated. The Bible for many of the missionaries who came over was the Bible that was written in Hebrew for the Old Testament, in Greek for the New Testament, bits and pieces in Aramaic scattered throughout. That was the Bible that needed to be left in Hawaii, and that was the version they wanted to leave. The problem is, as we shall see here, is that as I said here, not translated from English. The languages of the Bible there are three languages. So most of the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, about 75–80% of the Bible. There are about 14 pages in the Aramaic language, and the whole New Testament is written in ancient Greek. Here's an example of a Hebrew text. It takes years to learn to read this and to read it comfortably. You don't go to school for a year or for 6 months or take a Berlitz course. It takes years. Richards and those who came with him, the first seminary-trained missionaries in Hawaii, learned how to read Hebrew from the greatest Hebrew scholar in America of his day. They also had, like many other people, educated people of New England, they had learned how to read ancient Greek. But again, this is a difficult language, and it takes years of work in order for somebody to be able to read that comfortably and easily. Now, when we think about what makes a good translation, we have two sides to deal with. We have to have somebody who is comfortable with looking at the original texts, can read them comfortably, easily, but also, even more important than that skill with the original text, is a fluency in the language in which you are translating into. You have to know that language inside and out. You have to be able to do narrative, poetry, be able to understand puns, be able to understand the rhythm and the cadences of the language. What's the problem here? Missionaries can't do that. They come to Hawaii, they know Hebrew, they know Greek, they know Latin, some of them know French. They come to Hawaii and they're stumbling, mumbling incompetent speakers of Hawaiian, and this is true for a number of years. I often wondered what got me interested in this subject. Was when I first came to Hawaii. I came to Hawaii in 2001, and really one of the main reasons was to learn to speak Hawaiian. I had pretty much the same education. I had studied Hebrew and Latin and Greek and throughout college, and I started taking Hawaiian classes thinking that all my language background was somehow going to make it faster for me. It wasn't so. Hawaiian was just hard, and it took years and years and years. So I look at that Bible and I thought, these guys went through a very similar experience, except they didn't have dictionaries, and they didn't have grammar books, and they didn't know how to phrase the questions in ways that would be meaningful. How come when I look in this Hawaiian Bible, why is it so good? Right? If we were to put out a job description for a translator for the Bible from the ancient languages into English, we could put out something like this: native speaker of Hawaiian, reads fluently Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, has to know all of the different nuances of the language. Oh, and by the way, no dictionary, no grammar book, no textbook. That job has never been answered yet. That person has never yet existed. So again, why do we have such a good Bible translation in English? I mean in Hawaiian, sorry, no English involved. Right. It took the missionaries about 6 years before they felt even ready to begin a Bible project. They had done little bits and pieces, Bible verses and sermons, texts, but no significant piece of the Bible had been translated. It was decided in 1826 to have a series of meetings in Kailua. The seminary-trained missionaries. Now, missionaries there are many, many kinds. The ones who were trained in seminaries, those who had a college degree and then went on to do 3 or 4 more years, mostly in languages, in biblical language work, those were not so many. In the first group that came over, it was Hiram Bingham and Asa Thurston. In 1823, William Richards and Artemis Bishop came over, and these were ones who started the Bible translation work. But as I said, their Hawaiian is not really up to the task. So they met in Kailua with two Hawaiian chiefs, and this turns out to be the secret of what makes the Baibala the Baibala. So they began this close work, studying working on the Gospel of Matthew. Now the Bible is 30,000 plus verses. They, at these beginning stages, were not able to get through more than a verse or 2 a day. So you can imagine what the prospect is looking at. How do you take concepts from classical Hawaiian religion and put them in, and use that language to talk about things in the Bible? In the same way that New England's culture and Hawaii's classical culture are worlds apart, the religion that is found among the ancient Israelites, among early Christians, is as different as it could be from the classical religion of Hawaii. The language, the terminology, the concepts simply don't exist. How do we get there? So, mahalo. Okay. So in 1826, it was decided, as I said, to begin translating Matthew. These group of 6 people begin sitting down to begin working on it. Now, the people who translated 80% of the Bible, or at least did the rough drafts for 80% of the Bible, is this group on top. William Richards, Asa Thurston, Hiram Bingham, and Artemis Bishop. The group on the second row did the remaining 20%. They were latecomers and really just imitated and followed the work that had been done. What their real scholarly contribution to this is that unlike scholarship in most of Europe and most of America, these had been trained by the greatest Hebrew scholar in the English-speaking world. Hebrew scholarship had fallen to a very low level in America and England right at this time, whereas in Germany it was making great progress. Moses Stewart of Andover Seminary had taught himself German in order to learn the new scholarship, and guess who his first students were? They were William Richards and Hiram Bingham, and this first group of scholars, all of whom came to Hawaii. Now, as I said, they knew their Hebrew, they knew their Greek, but they did not know Hawaiian very well. What they did, in order to make the other side of the equation work, is they requested the assistance, and got really full-time assistance, from a group of 5 scholars native scholars, and by this I mean not that they had gone to school, but they were the most educated in traditional Hawaiian culture. They knew the mele, they knew the hula, they knew the mo'oku auhau, they knew the mo'olelo and the ka'au, they knew the stories, they knew the words, they knew what good Hawaiian sounded like, all right? So in sitting together, missionaries would make a rough draft translation from their original text. They would sit with Kelo Kamakau, not the famous historian Samuel Kamakau, but Kelo Kamakau. He was the chief of Ka'avaloa. They would sit, talk about what they thought the text said, write out a rough draft, and ask about the Hawaiian. Ask Hawaiian, please explain this back to us. And this process of back and forth, till both sides agreed not only that it accurately represented what was said, but that it said it well. It said it in language that was appropriate, that was in tune with a Hawaiian ear. They wanted to choose appropriate language. Now, what's appropriate language? Bible translations today aim at different standards of language. You can read a paraphrase that's aimed at teenagers. You can read a language that's aimed at scholars. They wanted to imitate the way that chiefs talk to chiefs. When you want to pick a word, what word would a chief use for this? So they scoured many of the same letters that we're going to talk about throughout this evening. Letters from chiefs to chiefs. Find the words there. Find the style there. Use the vocabulary, the grammar, the diction that you find in these particular stories. And as I said before, no English allowed. The translation cannot be from English. And when you come across a word that does not exist in Hawaiian, you can't borrow it from English. Now, that is not to say there are no English words that have been borrowed in the Hawaiian Bible. If a word was already current among Hawaiian speakers and it came from English, that was okay. People were using the word like mare for marry to indicate a certain type of marriage. People were already using it was okay to use it. But if a missionary ran into trouble about a name of a bird or a tree or a flower or a political concept, the word had to come from other sources, either combining multiple Hawaiian words together, borrowing it from Latin or Hebrew or Greek, but absolutely no English. One of the other...
Kanika umi.
Okay, mahalo. Okay. Another way to do this was to take old words from the old religion and give them new meanings. And in some ways, the Bible is the link from the old religion of Hawaii to the new religion. Both of these here are luakini. This is the ancient luakini, but Hawaiians going to church, they also call their churches luakini. The pastor is a kahuna. The nature of the worship is pule. These are all words taken directly from the ancient form of worship and brought into the new. After Kailua, they break out into many different teams with different experts and went through a procedure something like this. A translator makes a rough draft. He gives it to his assistant, usually, again, a high chief, a high-ranking chief. They work it out together. This is sent on to another team for review, passed again on to another team for review, brought back to the original team. A new draft is put together, and then only then is the clean copy prepared and a text printed.
Awesome.
Okay. This is a copy of the original draft. This looks like my papers in 3rd and 4th year Hawaiian after my teacher got through with them. This is what a missionary would put together. This is what his teacher would do with the text. After that, it was sent around to the various groups. They put together their notes. Finally, a text was put together. The main point I would like to leave is not the scholarship of the Bible, because it was 1819 scholarship. And we've learned a lot about the Bible and the languages since then. What we cannot improve on is the people who made the Hawaiian in the Bible. Nobody will ever speak Hawaiian better than this group of people. Nobody will ever have a finer sense of the cadence and the sound and the rhythms of the language. There are mistakes that got in. It's impossible to put together a 2,700-page book and not have misprints and grammatical errors and things slip through all the levels. But these are the folks who put together the Hawaiian Bible, who are responsible for the face of it that we see today. All right. If you'd like to read more, there is an article coming out. This is a new journal, Palapala. It'll be online soon. There is a long article. This was 10 minutes, a much longer article on this subject, the making of the Baibala Hemolele, and I hope you get a chance to read that. Thank you.
Hey. actually, our lovely segue to the next section is to bring it, because this is how translation and collaboration was working. So how does that bring us to this project? Well, generally, you're a lot more familiar with the history after the Bible comes out. 1860s, it's done. So we'll follow that in another lecture. So we can just jump forward and say, well, what was the mission houses doing and what are they doing? How did that link up to Aulu and what we do? And we'll finally get to you guys.
They're sitting so patiently. I just love Kapali's project on the Bible is just so amazing. That is such a sophisticated process in which they translated the Bible. It's just, I mean, it's what people would do today in the most scholarly institute you can imagine. I mean, a team that passes it around to 3 other teams to correct it, make suggestions, then go back to the original team. I mean, that's what you want people to do today. And they were doing this.
We're dreaming of having other teams that we can bounce things to. There's a dearth of teams.
Okay, so that was sort of background for the project. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about why we did this and a little bit about the collection. So I just want to say, I do not work for Mission Houses Museum. Wipe that out of your mind. There is no such thing any longer as Mission Houses Museum. It's Hawaiian Mission Houses Historic Site and Archives. Say it after me. Hawaiian Mission Houses Historic Site and Archives. Very good. That's what we are. It's taking a while for people to get that new name. So, it's important because our new name embodies our organization's new vision, mission, and main theme, which was finalized in early 2012. And the fact that we're here today testifies to the significance of the effective strategic planning that we've done and our organizational commitment to our community, its history, and its contemporary concerns. So this is our mission statement at Hawaiian Mission Houses, Historic Site and Archives. We preserve the heritage and interpret the stories of the American Protestant missionaries, their descendants, and their relationships with the people and cultures of Hawaii, connecting with contemporary life and encouraging a deeper understanding and appreciation of the complex history of Hawaii. We also created a vision in 2012, which was to enrich our community by fostering thoughtful dialogue and greater understanding of the missionary role and impact on the history of Hawaii. That's what this project is supposed to do, encourage dialogue about that role. And the first goal in our strategic plan is to preserve, manage, and make collections more accessible to the general public. And that's what this project is supposed to do also. The digitization of those records makes it available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at your own home, at your kitchen table or at your desk. That's the kind of access we'd like to see you have to all of our collection, and we're trying to do that as rapidly as we can. Our archivist, John Barker, is doing a really good job, excellent job in the digitization. I just want to give him a shout out for the work he's done on that. We also have a main theme. And I think that the main theme is really significant because it's embodied in what you're seeing tonight also, and that collaboration between Native Hawaiians and American Protestant missionaries resulted in, among other things, the introduction of Christianity, the development of a written Hawaiian language and establishment of schools that resulted in widespread literacy, the promulgation of the concept of constitutional government, the combination of Hawaiian with Western medicine, and the evolution of a new and distinctive musical tradition with harmony and choral singing. You've seen the Bible. These are just some examples of that. You've already seen the piapa. This is just the piapa sitting right here. This is the first hymnal that was ever done in the Hawaiian language. That's 1823 is when that was published. That was really the first true book published in the Hawaiian language. And then the first medical book is right here, Anatomia, which Dr. Judd translated from this book of anatomy. And Noke Kalai'aina is the Richards book that he did a partial translation of the elements of political economy from Francis Whalen. Ended up as this book, and that's the key book that we'll be looking at, Puake and I will be looking at later. Okay, so why did we think it was important to highlight the letters from the Ali'i? In the past several years, we've digitized and placed on our website thousands of photographs and pages of letters and journals written by Protestant missionaries who came to Hawaii as part of the Sandwich Island Mission. But we know how important it is to show different perspectives. Why did the Ali'i allow the ABCFM missionaries to land? Why did they protect them? Why did they trust them? And why did they bring them much of the food they ate for more than a decade, as you've seen, after they first arrived? What did the Ali'i say? What did they do? What were the issues that concerned them? How did they accommodate themselves and the nation to the new world with which they found themselves entangled? These are really the important questions that the Ali'i themselves can best answer, and the letters in the collection that we've translated and put online for you suggest answers to at least some of those questions. We're still debating how many letters there are in this collection. There's around 225, something like that. And we keep getting different numbers of Ali'i because we keep adding numbers. And they're not all Ali'i. Some of them are highly significant or influential Hawaiians as well. But we keep finding new ones, and we keep sticking them up as fast as we can as well. So our collection of Ali'i letters, I think, actually consists of 3 separate collections. One is the ABCFM collection that consists of letters written to board members in Boston, or letters that were copied and sent to them to keep them informed about what was happening in Hawaii. These letters are now owned by the ABCFM's renamed successor, Wider Church Ministries. That's the missional arm of the United Church of Christ and partner churches. This collection is currently housed at Harvard University's Houghton Library. We've gotten permission from both Wider Church Ministries and Houghton Library to make that collection part of our project, and that's why we're able to use it, because we asked them for that permission. Another part of the collection is from the Hawaiian Evangelical Association, now the Hawaii Conference United Church of Christ. We are the steward for that collection. We have their permission to digitize it. So this is also, and so that's the collection of materials kept by the Sandwich Island Mission, which evolved into the Hawaiian Evangelical Association. The third component of this collection is from Hawaiian Mission Children's Society, Hawaiian Mission Houses legal name. This collection consists of papers and documents donated by missionaries or descendants of missionaries through the years. This is such an interesting little letter, too, that I just have to pause. So this is from Charles Kanaina in 1839 to Levi Chamberlain. There's such a diversity of letters here. This is just such an interesting letter. He's asking for a pair of new shoes for Lunalilo, his son, because he has holes in them. I mean, they're just daily sorts of things like that in that collection. So much of this collection was cataloged as the Chief's Letters Collection, a combined subject-related grouping of materials. In the late 1960s, the subject collection was dispersed throughout the collection and arranged alphabetically by the name of the author. Once dispersed, people lost track of the size and significance of the collection. When I learned from researcher David Forbes that we had these letters in our collection, I asked our archivist, John Barker, if we could reconstitute that, bring it back together to see what we had. And John found a way to do that because, fortunately, the alphabetical and card catalog had while the alphabetical card catalog had obliterated the Chief's Letters Collection heading, the chronological card catalog had not done so. So by using the unaltered card catalog and some additional detective work, John and his interns were able to bring the collection back together. So we knew we wanted to make these widely available, and that involved translating them so Hawaiian and English language readers both had access to them. We also knew we wanted to digitize them to protect them from destructive use and make them readily available. So we put together the project with Puakea and Aulu Foundation, where we would scan the originals, Aulu would transcribe, translate, and annotate, and then we'd put the project up on our website for all to access. So the collection is now all on our website at www.missionhouses.org. So go to missionhouses.org, go to Library and Archives tab, click Digital Collection. There are a few buttons you have to press. Then the Digital Archives hot label, and then the Digital Archive Collection tree. And once you've done that, all the letters pop up. They're accessible alphabetically by author. And they are all word searchable, the whole collection. So you could put in the collection William Richards, and whatever letter mentions William Richards will pop up. And anything else that you're interested in. That is incredible. So I want to thank the Atherton Family Foundation for funding the project. Anybody here from the Atherton Foundation? I know there are. Robin and Paul, thank you so much for funding it. Olelo for filming the event to make it available to a broader audience. Thank you, Keikoa. Kamehameha School for hosting the event. And of course, the panelists who are participating in the event. And I especially want to thank Puakea and Kapali, both of whom have been great to work with. And I really wish we had several other projects we could dive into. But now I'm going to let Puakea describe Ulu.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We've been working with Hawaiian language since about 1980. I used to work up here, as a matter of fact, Hawaiian language specialist in the 80s, and then have stayed with UH for a long, long time. So language has been the drive. But when we mapped, and I think I mentioned it, how huge the cache is, it just became so obvious that there's too much knowledge that's buried in Hawaiian language. We can't wait for everyone to learn Hawaiian. I would like every one of you to learn Hawaiian. But even if you just learn a little bit, you can get into this. In the meantime, we're trying to bring it to you. Because it's about knowledge. It's not about language. So Ulu was set up to mentor young people, because even though there's been a real growth in Hawaiian language, I showed you, revitalization of language in Hawaii is a global success. Most of the languages that you hear that are that threatened disappear. You don't hear of them again. Hawaiian is still a living and vibrant language in these islands, and that's really huge. And whether you're a speaker or not, you are to be congratulated, because it takes the encouragement of those who don't speak is what makes those who do speak learn more, right? So, but we've sort of brought that idea into Ulu. Dwayne Steele set this up to take my experience. I was always sort of a rebel and did translation, which was not part of the revitalization movement. Translation was actually antagonistic to revitalization in the minds of some. It's not true, but it took us a while to work that out. So I kept doing this, but when we saw how big it was, Dwayne said, we've got to make everything we do. We've been doing Hawaiian language books for 15, 20 years. He said, we got to make it available to the people who don't speak Hawaiian. We have to keep making Hawaiian books, but we have to translate them. I said, there aren't any translators. He says, that's what you can do. You make translators. So he set up Ulu, and he gave me the time and the support to have 2 kids at my hip for everything that I do, basically. So we took on trainees, not interns, but trainees. And he set up a board, and part of my board members are here. Can you just raise a hand to let them know that we really do have live support here? I think Gaylord's here, Wayne's here, I heard Aaron is here, and Marty is here, right? If there are more, loving you all. Because they've helped this. It's really different. And I want to thank the Atherton Foundation who supported these kinds of things. This is such an odd little specialty that you just think, well, we support language. We support language. But the kids that, and you'll see, the kids that we've brought on to train, they already have a master's degree in Hawaiian language from our best university. I'm their teacher. But we can't teach enough for them to handle the historical materials that they haven't seen. There's a marriage of the digital age that brought us forward, that made all this available, and it's not been within reach for 100 years. So Ulu is a place to familiarize a new body of young people with this material, because it's exploding out. And we only have a handful of kids that could really play in there. So them becoming experts allows them to keep that moving, keep more people becoming more familiar. And the more that we put out, so they learn and they produce. The more that we can produce in English and Hawaiian makes it more familiar for the students of Hawaiian today and makes it accessible to the non-speaker. So that's the goal of Aulu. We have a very short motto. That's our whole guiding force is we bring the past to the present by developing resources, that's the books that we do and the thing, and resource people, and that's our trainees. So under that, mostly we have different projects. You've seen the Hi'iaka i Kapolio Pele, perhaps. You've seen we've actually got a bunch of Kamakau's work, Ke Kumo'opuni, Ke Opuni Mo'i, they're both done. Poi Poi's Kamehameha. There are new things in the well that are headed out to press. But we didn't have an arm for this when Tom approached me. So we made an arm. And this is the team. This is the Mission Letters Project, the Hui Palapala, and that girl on the screen is usually on screen. We do, because it's a small group we're working with. We often have our project cover multiple islands. So we're doing the actual in-house training by Skype. I'll have 2 live bodies with me, 1 on Maui, 3 on Molokai. It goes back and forth. In this one, we only had 4. We brought on John and Hina. You'll meet them both indirectly. They were my trainees. They both had an MA in Hawaiian language already. They were both enthusiastic to be jumping in. Hilinai is my own godson. He had voiced an interest in learning from me. He's 16. I said, well, shadow a project. So he came in as a shadow. And he was good. So we made a special student trainee position and gave him a lot of responsibility and a little bit of money. Kaliko was actually our in-house, what did we call it? Research assistant, right? And she calls him a specialist, I call him an assistant. Mostly he's the garut around the house. He does all the projects, he's the support system. So he was brought in because we were handed 180 some files, yeah? The number keeps flexing. And we had to have the original. The PDF had to be broken up into different images. It had to, now we have draft translations and second translations and multiples. They're going back and forth. He was the organizer of all that. It was so complex that we started just saying, okay, just come to the meetings. Because we would meet every week for about 5 hours. And that's how we go over. They've all been given assignments. Those come in, we go line by line in a group. So what I fix on your work goes to everybody else. So it's collective and everybody gets to see, and it's sort of like dancing in your underwear, but it's the way, everybody gets to see your flaws, but everybody learns from that. So it passes that to a bigger circle. So he was brought in as a trainee to join in this team. And every week we would go through a group review of everybody's work, and then we'd do another edit session on every bunch of letters until we finally get what's called a PNF, which is a Puakea Nogelmeyer final, give it to Tom. Before we launch over to their work, our partner who can't be here tonight, Hina Nubel, who is high enthusiastic. She graduated MA in, 4 or 5 years ago. She's the owner of Kealo Pico, if you're wearing any Kealo Pico business. She does research and translation. She's just an absolutely inexhaustible source of energy. And unfortunately, she's in Aotearoa. So she was our trainee. But our first guy on board, and I'm not sure how your mic is working, but Kaliko Aloha Martin. And this is some data about him. I'm going to ask each of them to talk about a letter, talk about themselves, talk about the project, talk about a single letter. Know that there's 187 just in Hawaiian and another 50 in English. This is really a good play box to dig around in. So you have to go find the individual ones. They're not that hard. Tom made it sound complicated to get to it. It's not. Missionhouses.org, fumble around, you'll find it. It's digital. It's digital. Anyway, welcome. Kaliko Aloha Martin.
All right. Aloha mai kako. Aloha. I'm Kaliko Aloha Martin. All of those titles up there can be... Yeah, so don't be mistaken. I just want to point your attention to the everybody got a program. I just want everybody to see an example of the product that John, Hina, myself, and Hilina'i go through. It's on, I believe, it's in the middle. So you have the original in the middle of the letter, and you see the product. Yeah, this is what Aulu has been doing for the year and a half that we were a part of the project. So every individual gets assigned a letter, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and we come in and everybody does a typescript. Now, if you look at the original, it's almost like an interpretation or a translation in itself. Yeah, coming from the script, Hilina'i, by the way, learned script on the spot, and we do a typescript. Everybody does a typescript. We review the typescript as a team from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock, maybe till 11:30 on a Thursday. And then everybody does a translation. And the process is where the meat, where the EO is where we gain the most, is in the process of sitting with our kumu for 5, however many hours a week, and learning from him. Because the things that he has up in his brain cannot be taught at the university, can only be taught in his house in Kalihi. You gotta come over, have a cup of his coffee. It'll get you enthused. Anyway, okay, so moving on. I want to talk a little bit about this one letter. And before I do, I want to thank the Mission Houses Museum. I want to thank Aulu. I want to thank, shameless plug, yes. I want to thank my boss, Kauisai Dudwa. Mahalo nui. But I do want to say that doing this project gave me a superpower. In the 3rd grade, I wrote this paper about if I could have any superpower in the world, what would that superpower be? And that would be to travel back in time. And through this project, through Oaulu, and through the mission houses, the Hawaii Mission.
I was going to say that. It's not Mission Houses Museum, Kaliko.
It's grained in my head, I'm sorry.
Don't forget missionhouses.org.
Hawaii Mission.
Hawaiian Mission Houses Historic Site and Archive.
Kalamai. It's on the front page. So like I was saying, the superpower to travel back in time. Now every letter, every 180-something Hawaiian letter that we've touched, and I've touched them all because I managed all of these files. They transported me to that place, to that time, to that person, to that pen, to that paper. And I'm transported immediately. And so I wanted to put an emphasis, and Tom talked about him earlier a little bit, but Timoteo Ha'alilio, who is a revered figure in our history, who sometimes may be overlooked. And those of you who do not know him, missionhouses.org, the letters, you'll get learned there. So I want to talk about this single character in our history, and we tend to heroicize them, our figures in history. We tend to think them as heroes, but not as humans, and we forget that. And I want to show this emphasis here that Timoteo Ha'alilio, who was a diplomat, who was a Kanaka Maoli diplomat that was commissioned by his king on a mission that he might have known that he might not return. He might have known that he would not return to see his birthland again. And so when he writes, he opens up his letter, and this is a letter in 1843, Timoteo Ha'alilio, to his mother, Iseka Kipa. And he opens up the letter saying, "Auhe oe ku makuahine, where are you, my mother? Where art thou, my mother?" And he goes on and he says that, "Oh, you are the one who fed me from your bosom." And you can show. And the reason why I picked this letter, the 2 reasons. First is Timoteo Ha'alilio is awesome. The second, because I love my mother very, 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 very much. And so that love that one has for their mother, you can imagine that, and I see that in his writing when he's writing this letter. And so he goes on with his salutation, and he goes on to explain where he's at. He's at London Hotel. He's writing this letter from the hotel in London. And he explains that this place is a aina makamaka ole, a friendless land, and an aina malihini ya'u, a foreign land that is unfamiliar to him. Now we can all relate to that. Everybody in this room can relate to that. When we go away from home for 5, 10 days, for me it's 3, homesick. Can you imagine this man going away from his country, leaving his kingdom, leaving his land? and going and he has in mind that he might not return. And so he goes on, and I'm sorry, I'm going to finish up here, wrap this up. But in his last closing remarks, he explains to his mother that I'm not concerned with myself and my physical difficulties, because he's been sick this entire trip, because it is his Lord, whether that be Kauikioli, that his King, or that Lord Jesus Christ, that he will be supplied, he will be well supplied in this life and in the next. And so if there are three things that you take away from what I've learned and my experience on this project, the first being that you learn, and it's about the process. I cannot stress that it's not about the product, but about the process, that Aulu fosters resource people, that we three here have learned more about history through these letters than any book can teach you. And I also want to say that it changed my perspective on that the anti-missionary, anti-Anglo-Saxon rhetorical tradition that scholarship has been produced, contemporary scholarship. And it's not to discredit the scholarship, but just to change a paradigm, to shift a paradigm. And it shifted mine. And it showed me that it wasn't the Kanaka Maoli who were doing the following. They were the ones who were they were making the orders. They weren't the ones who were who were following. Aye, hui kalamai. So I'm gonna I'll pass it on to my colleague here, this handsome bug over here, John Yasuda.
Okay. Aloha mai ka. Aloha mai kakou. Aloha. My name is John Yasuda, and I'm a 2012 graduate of the master's program at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, School of Hawaiian Knowledge. I'm really fortunate that I had a chance to be a part of this project. So I want to talk a little bit about the reasons why I feel it's been so valuable to me personally and in some of the work that I do. And then I'll also be sharing a letter that I want to highlight a few points about and kind of bridge what Puakea and Tom and Kapali have talked about, and bridge it to the letters and its relevance to us today and our scope and lens into Hawaiian history. So for me, I started learning Hawaiian when I was about 20 years old. I'm 30 now, so I've been learning for about 10 years. And I first started learning at the University of Hawaii. And as I went through Hawaiian language, the foundation that I gained there really gave me the ability to start to dive into some of the more historical materials, such as the newspapers and eventually the letters that we're working on today. And I think for anyone who dives, who gets really interested in a subject or in a profession or whatever it might be, it's really always interesting to see the source of where that knowledge really comes from. And so to look back at some of these letters which originate in the 1820s, that really sets the foundation for a lot of the written language that was a source for the newspapers and the written Hawaiian language that we have today. So it's really cool kind of how looking back at some of these original letters really helps me to kind of know how to break the rules of the grammar in the right way. You know, after having learned so much about the grammar and you're supposed to do things this way and not do it that way, this kind of teaches you how to do I guess what it does is it gives you an insight into almost a spoken language, because at the time that these letters were written, the orthographical norms were only beginning to be established. So if you can imagine a language that was purely a spoken language that all of a sudden is becoming a written language, you start to see the writings of a language that are not far removed from being a spoken language. And it's not until later in the 1800s where the standards really become more set as far as how Hawaiian is a more written language. So this is just the very beginnings of it. So yeah, looking into these source materials, I think a few of the things that really helped me to understand is better context of Hawaiian history, grammar and vocabulary that was used at those times, because again, these are the chiefs who were writing the letters, and their grammar and some of the words that they use might be slightly different and were slightly different than what was used perhaps colloquially at the time amongst the the commoners. So it was interesting to see their style of language use. So I chose a letter from James Kahuhu to Levi Chamberlain. James Kahuhu was educated with the chiefs, and Levi Chamberlain was the superintendent for secular affairs after coming with the second company of the missionaries. So I chose this letter not because it's fascinating in and of itself, but because there's 3 points in the letter that I think I want to try to express why these 3 important points kind of give us a scope and kind of show the landscape of a lot of the importance that the letters contained. So the first part is just simple, expresses simple business transaction going on. It says, "Ualoa mai nei ia'u ka pahi, he umi pahi I loa mai nei." Basically saying, I received 10 knives. But what the greater picture that this gives us is how, although the missionaries did not come as businessmen, they had to conduct simple business transaction. There were a lot of day-to-day that was blended in with the missionaries' purpose of spreading the gospel. And so it's a lot of these day-to-day simple interactions that the missionaries start to see the way that this group operates. And there's an elegance to it that helps pave the way for the message that they want to share, which is the gospel. And the missionaries were the first group that, as Kumupuakea mentioned, the Hawaiians had been in contact with the outsiders for 40 years prior to the missionaries, but the missionaries were the first group of people who came with a unified purpose and didn't come necessarily for whaling or for business or what have you. And it was their sole purpose was the spreading of the gospel. And the Hawaiians got to see their spreading of the gospel, but they lived and they interacted on a day-to-day basis with them. And I think that the way that they went about their business and in a real fair and way helped to pave the way for their message. So this next part, it says, "Eia mai ka uwahi olelo iaoi ke ha'i aku nei wau I ka olelo a ke akua and I nā kanaka o keia wahi I ka olelo a ka haku I ike pono lako I ka pono o ke akua." So within the same letter, going from talking simple business, talking to how Kahuhu is sharing the word of God with the people, and the reason why is he wants them to know the goodness of God. So he himself seems to have accepted the message and wants to pass it on to his people. And the third part of this letter, I won't read it, but it basically is talking about how the people are greatly desiring the word, the written word. The written word, how there are many students here, many men, women, and children, all who greatly desire the written word. And so it's the literacy and the skill sets and the tools and all of these things that, that the Hawaiians seem to have found very practical. And I think for, like any teaching, anything that's going to be of interest, it needs to have practical application to the recipient in order for it to seem important. So a lot of these things that the missionaries brought over were practical. And the sewing and the trades and the tools and the literacy was a really big one that, that the Hawaiians really wanted. They wanted to add those types of skill sets to the skill sets they already had. And that along with that came the knowledge of the Word of God. And it really, I think, helped to bring it full circle when the literacy kind of opened up that door for the written word, and of course the Word of God was that written word in the Bible. And I think that because of the way the missionaries dealt with things, that helped their cause so much more in bringing the Word of God to the people, which was their original reason for coming. So I wanted to share that letter because it kind of bridged the 3 different areas that I think were very important in pushing forward their cause of sharing the gospel, the written word, and what have you. So that's the letter I wanted to share.
Aloha. My name is Helena Isaidudua. My mom, Ko Isaidudua, made it a point of hers to send as many of her children as she could through the Hawaiian Immersion Program. So I am a product of almost 12 years of Hawaiian immersion schooling. Yeah. Thanks to Anakala Puakea, I was given the opportunity to shadow behind two Hawaiian language scholars, John Yatsuda and Hino Nubo, and eventually I became a full-fledged trainee. Throughout this project, I benefited greatly. One of the first things I obtained from this project was a great sense of pride for my people. The way they were able to navigate the trials and tribulations that they faced becoming a country unto themselves. And the letter I'd like to show is one of the great trials they had to face, which kind of changed the way the government began to grow. So this letter is from Kalani Moku, one of the foremost ruling chiefs of the Hawaiian Islands at the time, to Hiram Bingham, one of the members of the first company of missionaries in 1826. This letter follows an incident where subjects of the British and American, of Britain and America, ransacked and kind of destroyed Hiram Bingham's house after the banning of prostitution in the Hawaiian Islands. So the first topic I'd like to point out is how it seems pretty standard that members of the ruling class, like Kalani Moku, they ask every chance they get about literacy. So here it says, "E ha'awi mai o ko ia mako I ka palapala, a'o aku no ho'ik mako," which means, give us literacy and we will teach it. The second part, which goes hand in hand with that, is the way they obtained the word of God as well as literacy, which here it says, "Wakapu no ko mako wahine, wa'o no I ka olelo ake akua." Our women are forbidden, for we have indeed learned the word of God. So it shows that not only do they know the religion in concept, but they know it in practice as well. This further shows that point, as it says here, "O huhu mai o ko awinei, na mako ko o ko heva, a ole no mako o ko haole no." All of you get faulted, but the wrong for which you are blamed, banning prostitution, is done by us, not by you foreigners. So it kind of contradicts the idea, the misconception that missionaries came here, landed ashore, and started barking orders, and we followed. The ali'i were the ones who chose what were the rules at the time, as it shows here. Yeah, mahalo. That's it.
Is this mic on? I just wanted to mention that, of course, Hilina'i coming up through, in schools today, they do not teach script. They teach, block printing and typing. And so to do this, he had to learn script, as Kaliko mentioned, in a week, basically, how to read script. So very worthwhile. Jumping to, now we've done all the pieces of this project and we've given it to Tom. Kapali's looked at the project as a whole. So can we hand this to you, Kapali, and look at what's inside of it? Oh, mani'i.
I don't think I really introduced myself the first time around. I am Kapali Lion. My position is I am the chair of the Department of Religion at the University of Hawaii. My research specialty is early 19th century Hawaii, but particularly the mission and particularly the Hawaiian reaction to the mission. While I do teach the Bible courses and some courses in biblical language, this is the material that I particularly love, and it's really the reason that I did come to Hawaii. This woman, most of us probably know who she is. This is, of course, Ka'ahumanu, the only real picture we have of her. This is one of the most dynamic, powerful, courageous people that I have ever run into in looking through history, particularly here in Hawaii. She was a match in every way for her husband who conquered the islands and joined them, and yet it was she who in many ways turned Hawaii from the course it had been into a different course, a course that she felt that it needed to follow in order to become part of a larger world. For the most part, Hawaii had remained in many of its traditional ways and part of its traditional culture, and that was part of who Kamehameha was, that he rejected outside religion. He said, no, what was good for me when I was young is good for me now. But as when he died, things changed. There was a feeling that in the biological holocaust that Hawaii was going through, the terrible depopulation, that something had to give way, that Hawaii was no longer the world unto itself as it had been at one time. Hawaii was now part of a much larger world. And how, as a small nation, could it survive in the midst of larger nations? How could it enter into a world that had been unknown not many years before? It was this woman who steered that course and made most of those decisions. So I show her up front, and I'll finish with her also, but we need to keep her in mind because she looms over this whole process that we're going to look at. Now, the Ali'i in 1820, I'm going to run through this really quickly because you've been very patient, and I'm going to skip a fair amount of the detail on these slides. The Ali'i in 1820 are really those who are around Ka'ahumanu. They are in absolute charge, but they need to find a way to bring Hawaii into the modern world for Hawaii's own survival. And their solution is religious change and education. They grew up in a world where religion was a matter of life and death. Religion was not a simple matter. It was not a matter you could take seriously or not. People died regularly in ancient Hawaii because of religious violation. They grew up with this attitude, and that remained their attitude about religion even when they overthrew important aspects of their own religion. The group that arrived in Hawaii in 1820 were a group of very young New Englanders. We usually see pictures of missionaries and they look kind of old, but when they came here, most of them when they're in the late 20s and early 30s, they were young people, but they were highly educated. In the same way that the chiefs of Hawaii were the best educated people of their nation, the New Englanders were the best educated people of their nation too. They came with the same purpose in mind, religion and education. And it was on this point, on these 2 points, that two groups of people, separated in every possible way, joined together in what we might call an embrace for a time of 20 or 30 years, a period of absolute unity of purpose. What is the goal? How do we get there? What do we need to do? This is why chiefs are supporting missionaries. Missionaries are teaching chiefs. They are hand in hand trying to bring about the same goal. Now, it didn't last forever. There certainly came a time when missionaries and chiefs saw things very differently. But for these the 20 or 30 years we're talking about, it is a collaboration in every way. When Hawaiians first began writing, it was not the way most of us. Now, when we talk, it is a stream of sound. What are the boundaries of a word? These are concepts that we learn later on. When you hear a foreign language spoken, you don't hear words, you hear a stream of sound. And this is what writers are doing. They're writing down that stream of sound, and sometimes they hear it differently and they see it differently. This is an early letter by Liho, and I've underlined a number of things that are imitative of quick speech. He sometimes pronounces the sound we hear as O, as sometimes he pronounces it as R. He writes this phrase right here, walo, that is that walohe? Sorry, I'm pretty blind here. We would write that today very differently. But he's writing what he hears himself saying and putting it down on paper. All of the writers in the collection learned to write in this fashion. Now, the writers include a wide range of folks. They are, we think probably almost all of them are ali'i. Some of them are royals. Some of them are high-ranking ali'i, including especially the circle around Ka'ahumanu. Some of them are on a different plane there, what we might call elevated ali'i. People who maybe not have the ruling chief status, but who have been elevated through marriage or for other reasons, and some we just really don't know. Kalamai. Okay. This last group, for example, some of them we know more about, some we don't know very much. Most of the recipients of this collection are to missionaries. 99 alone to Levi Chamberlain. In fact, without Levi Chamberlain, we probably wouldn't have this collection. He is the business guy. He's the one that everybody needs to talk to. Many of the letters are to his successors. He died in 1849, so there's another 20 or 30 letters are to his successors. A few are to people outside of the mission. Several to Jeremy Everts, who is the head of the ABCFM, or the corresponding secretary of the ABCFM. A few to a couple other people, and then a few to people who really aren't closely connected to the mission. Some related to newspapers, one letter to French priests advising that it really is time to leave. A few Hawaiian recipients that we have, letters that somehow got into the collection in ways that are we really don't know. Maybe because of Chamberlain. Why would Hawaiians writing to other Hawaiians end up in the collection? But they did. There's actually one letter, and it comes way at the end of it. It's 1887. It's by Lili'o Kalani, and she's writing to Mr. Forbes and inviting him to an ice cream party. So some of the letters are hard to track down, but the body of them come from a period in which it really is helpful in our understanding of what was going on in Hawaii. Now, the writers, several writers have a number of 5 or more letters themselves. You can see that Kekuanau, he has the largest number, and yet most of his letters are requests for things, for cash, for shoes, for vests, things like that. There are a number of letters by John Papa'i'i, who also goes by under the pen name of Kaninau. You can see the list of folks. There's some of the most important letters are written by chiefs who aren't listed on this list. Ka'ahumanu has 2 letters, and one which I'll go over in a little bit more detail, a long and beautiful letter. But we see a wide distribution of chiefs, most of them coming, I'm going to go ahead just a little bit and back up, most of them coming from the period of time between 1830 and 1845. So the number of Hawaiian letters in the collection is 187. Your program has 230, but that includes English letters. The letters that we've been looking at are 187 Hawaiian letters from 1821 to 1822 to 1887. The majority of the letters are written to mission staff. 124 come from this period of 1830 to 1845. This is a critical period. Hawaiian newspapers don't really start until 1834. There are more and more of them over the years, but for the most part, the missionaries are using the newspapers for their own purposes. And Hawaiians writing about Hawaiian matters receive a smaller amount of space. It's not until 1861 that we get Hawaiian newspapers run by Hawaiians, written by Hawaiians, written for Hawaiians. So in this period, anything that we have written in Hawaiian relating to matters of the kingdom is particularly helpful to us. After Chamberlain's death in 1849, we only have 21 letters, so you can see what a critical part he has in this. Letters written to him got saved, got preserved, got put in the collections. Letters written to other people, it might be really quite haphazard. After 1869, we only have 1 letter at all, and that's the letter of Lili'o Kalani with the invitation to an ice cream party. There are several important genres of letters in this. 32 of these letters are what we call po'aha letters, and I'll explain more about this in a minute. Po'aha letters refer to a particular type of meeting with prospective church members. A great number of the letters are payments, bills, receipts. I need shoes, the one you saw. One we'll look at in a minute. I need a new vest. Some of them are newspaper contributions, letters that were written. One particular fellow was particularly interested in investigating certain subjects, sent them to Gulick or to the business editor of the Ku'oko'a newspaper and said, see about printing this, and it ended up in this particular collection. There are letters to members of the ABCFM, and there are reports. These are also helpful to us in terms of history. Letters of reports of major events that talk about these events, one Hawaiian chief talking to another. What do we think about the British coming? How are we? What do we see about what's going on about the French coming to Hawaii? The uses of the collection are many and varied. One of them, I'm sorry, I can't read my own slide here. Oh, this is the one on language. Okay, one of them is for language. We have a lovely Hawaiian dictionary. Mrs. Pukui and Samuel Ebert put together a lovely Hawaiian dictionary, but it has they were 2 people, and 2 people working in a sea of books and papers that really cannot cover all that is necessary. This particular period of Hawaiian is almost entirely undocumented in our current dictionary. For example, there's a phrase that I put there.
Pili ka ipu I ka leo,
Oh, kalamai.
nalo nei.
Ina mai. There's an idiom. In the letters, we keep running into this phrase, ina mai. And you look in our Hawaiian dictionary, there's no indication of what this might mean. It seems to mean something exactly like ayamai or ayamai. Here is something like that. But again, it's undocumented. There are grammatical features that are particularly common in this area that are not common otherwise. In terms of writing and spelling, this is particularly interesting and particularly challenging for somebody who learns Hawaiian in a classroom. The boundaries of a word were simply whatever anybody wanted them to be. You might spell the word ikaika as 3 different syllables. You might spell it as 1 syllable. You might join words, you might split words. The concept of punctuation really hasn't hit, and it really doesn't much hit before 1860. People are using punctuation in the same way that they're doing spelling. When you write, you imitate your speech. When you put in a punctuation mark, you imitate your speech. I don't know if many of you have heard the old Olelo Hawai interviews with Larry Kimura with old folks. Puakea I did that show for a long time also. People doing a certain type of staccato type of speech. Wahele mako ika. And these kinds of breaks and staccato performance. People of the time put commas in those places, commas that have no meaning for a modern reader, but imitated their particular form of speech. So we can learn a great deal about 18... What's that? Oh, kamahalo. Okay. So let's...
Hello, kids. I didn't mean to interrupt, but...
No, it's a useful interruption. Okay. I'm going to skip, talk just a minute about Levi Chamberlain. He is their man of the moment. 99 letters of the collection written to him again. He was a trusted member of the mission. The Po'aha letters that I mentioned earlier are the letters in which people are nominated to go to meetings that will lead to church membership. Now, in Hawaii of this period, you don't decide that I'm a good Christian, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to become baptized and become a church member. If you're a chief, maybe you make that decision. But if you're a maka'inana, you really don't make that decision. Your chief, somebody in your village, somebody you work with, a chief that you know, you might express, I'm ready, I think I'm ready to move ahead, I want to be baptized, I want to become part of the church. Your chief will nominate you, and he'll write a letter probably to Chamberlain or maybe to one of Chamberlain's successors, and he'll say, this person is ready, but maybe he is and maybe he isn't, and we don't, and you'll make the final decision. There's a character reference. He's a good person. He's maybe not ready for this business again. What the real value of this letter, this kind of letter, and it's something I really didn't know in spite of the fact I've been studying the mission for a long time, is that it is the chiefs who are controlling church membership. It is the chiefs who decide who is moving ahead. It is the chiefs who are deciding in the same way that chiefs have always decided who takes the important roles within the society. They are the talent spotters. They are the ones who say, yes, this person is ready for po'aha. They're going to go to the Thursday night meetings. They're going to study, and maybe they will be ready for baptism and church membership. Here's an example. This is from Gideona La'anui, written to Chamberlain. And you can see there's absolutely no punctuation there whatsoever. Splitting the sentences, and sometimes the words can be a challenge. The letter is really quite simple. He nominates a particular person who is a part of his deep sea fishing crew, who run the nets. There's historical information here. We didn't know this about La'anui. We didn't know that he had a crew. Some of these letters help us to understand what was going on throughout Hawaii in terms of economics too. This is La'anui, a portrait of La'anui. Another letter that came to him is from Charles Kana'ina. This is a letter of a different sort. It says, I need a black vest. Black vest that doesn't fade in. It doesn't fade in when put into water. And I'm thinking that maybe you're the guy to get it. And if you're Chamberlain, you think, well, I'll see if I have a black vest. And then you take a look at Mr. Kana'ina, and you say, yes, sir, I'll get that to you right away. It's coming anytime you want it. He was a powerful figure, and he often lent money to the mission, but he also expected a certain amount of reciprocation. Anyway, there are a great many letters of this type. These tell us something about the economics of Hawaii. What were the trade supplies? What was available in the stores? If it was available in the stores, chiefs didn't ask missionaries for it. If you could get it somewhere else, then you went and got it somewhere else. This also is true in the case of cash. Asking for sometimes money was in very short supply, and so money the request would come also to Levi Chamberlain. Here's a letter where Abner Paki, the founder of the school, needs $20, and he puts it in very terse terms. I kala na'u. I want some money. I want $20. And then Chamberlain, of course, finds a way to get him his $20. In fact, sends him 40 that he owns. With a little note here at the bottom by his messenger, Opunui. He says, I went and I got the $20. Actually, I got $40, and I'm giving that back. So many of these letters don't seem like real gems of literary history, and really many of them are not. But they are pieces in the puzzle of the Hawaiian kingdom of this time, pieces in the puzzle of the churches, pieces in the puzzles of the economics. That is Paki. Now, my favorite letter is one that I'm going to go over it rather quickly, but this is Ka'ahumanu's letter. It's a long letter that she writes to the head of the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions. When Pehea?
Kaipu makawaha.
Oh, mahalo.
O mea,
Ai,
ale ho pa'a ia no ka kele.
Mahalo ka omapopo ana. She writes this letter just not long before her death. When missionaries came, she was part of the group that made the decision they can stay for a year. When they did come, though, she was really not very interested. It was a political decision. Hawaii needed to join the world. Hawaii needed to become part of the religion of all of the nations that were visiting Hawaii. As time went on, though, this powerful, able woman became in many ways a very sincere and heartfelt Christian. Sometimes we look at the political leaders and we think they're doing things strictly for the political benefit of it. When you look at this letter that she writes to Everett, who is one of the most respected religious figures in America, it is both a statement of her own faith and a statement of her own conversion and deep devotion to following Jesus, but also a letter that says, we did it. We did it. People came to us as missionaries, and we still accept them as teachers, but we did it. We are a Christian nation. We are not now one of the Aina Na'aupo. We are part of the Aina Na'auao. We are a civilized Christian nation. I and my Hanai, in this case is Kauikiauli, I and my Hanai have gone throughout the islands. We have proclaimed this message. Now, she, more than any other person, was responsible for Hawaii becoming a Christian nation. She, most leaders in the past had gone out in order to do ho'okupu, to accept tribute, to receive the reverence of the people out. She went out island upon island, tour upon tour, taking the message. This is the new law. This is the new way. This is the new faith. And more than any missionary could have done, more than any kahunapule could have done, insisted that she turned her nation in a particular direction, a direction that she says, I'm going to skip to this last part, that Hawaii is now one of the Christian nations. She says, we're going to pray for you. We're going to pray for all the heathen nations. We're going to pray for all of the Aina Na'auao, and you too. But she says also, you do the same thing. Pray for all the heathen nations. That's not us. Pray for the rest of the civilized nations, meaning the Christian nations, and for us too. That's our group. We have done what we sent out to do. And the Palapala, the letters, the Baibala, were all part of that mission. She closes with a lovely statement saying that you and I will never meet, but our minds have already met. We are already here together, but in the last day in God's kingdom, we will finally see one another. It is a lovely, lovely letter, whether you agree with the political decision she made or the way she went. It is a lovely letter and allows us a dip into the mind of one of the great leaders in Hawaii. So just in conclusion, the collection itself serves many purposes: historical, economic, linguistic. If we want to know about the Hawaiian Kingdom, particularly 1830 to 1845, if we want to know the language that was spoken here, the collection is absolutely essential in order to get at it. We can also see that these common goals between missionaries and chiefs produced a collaboration that is really quite remarkable. Different peoples coming together to accomplish a common goal. All right. Anyway, and the collection certainly provides us a lot of information before the advent of the newspapers. Now, I hustled through a lot of that stuff. If anybody has questions, I will certainly sit around. Or
We're going to open it up to questions, okay. And we'll just have a mahalo.
Aui hola.
You want to take on questions there?
Does anybody have any questions?
You'll notice we almost need police to keep us from from talking way over time, but it's because it's too interesting. There's just too much going on, and we all get enthused, right? These guys are real scholars. I'm a cheerleader, so we're all punching along. But are there questions? This should raise, I would hope, questions. Any now. Oh, look at you with a microphone.
So, Pukea, in all your decades of translating and looking at various sources, you must have come across now thousands of new words that have not been in the Andrews Dictionary, in the Pukea Albert Dictionary, or any other dictionary. So, is there a new dictionary, like an appendix to those dictionaries?
I think there's impending development. The whole digitizing of material is opening up all these resources that can be compared. So like the digital files, the more we clean up those newspapers, for one thing. I mean, that was done, a lot of it was done in Cambodia, a lot of it was done by loving people, hand-typed. There's still a lot of errors. The more that gets cleaned up, you compare that digital file against the digital file of the Pukui, and it filters out all the words that aren't there. Is that fabulous? So we're headed there. In the meantime, the kids who are diving into that, that's where you're learning words, is by doing, learning by doing. But great question, because we need a new dictionary. It'll happen. Kamehameha might take the lead on that. Oh, another, throw Jamie and Randy under the wheels of the bus. Okay. Another question?
Yes, hello. My name is Kylie Reese. I'm an instrument repairman and builder here in Oahu. And I have started a project with the Martin Guitar Company, tracking down the life of Mekia Kealakai, who, as many people know, was a Royal Hawaiian band leader and star of his day, composer, musician. Turns out he had a hand in inventing the modern dreadnought guitar with the Martin Guitar Company. It's a story that is just mind-blowing, and I've been researching on my own, and this is like, I'm so happy to have found this community. Because I found letters from him to Johnny Wilson that I need help reading, because I unfortunately don't speak Hawaiian. But I have so many questions, and one thing in studying his life and his contributions to the world and to music and the instrument design, the recording industry, the Hawaiians were so innovative on a craft, hands-on level. My question, among many others, is what were the missionaries learning from the Hawaiians as far as, how to finish wooden things, how to use tools, how to eat, all that stuff.
Can I comment that in Hawaiian, the word that we use learn and teach as two separate verbs. They're one word in Hawaiian. A'o is a two-way verb. So when I say let us a'o, it means even though I'm the teacher, you're the student, we're both going to learn in that process. And so I think definitely there was a lot of back and forth. There would be material for you in the Hawaiian language newspapers, and that would actually help frame where to look in the various archives. So there's direction that the new resources that are available are really sort of able to help guide in a way that it wasn't available to us just a decade ago. So I think there's really good things for you.
Thank you.
Oh,
One thing that we didn't mention is that I said that when missionaries came here, the Hawaiian was pretty bad. One thing they really did learn from Hawaiians was Hawaiian. By 1840, most of them were speaking pretty good Hawaiian. Were writing carefully, intelligible, and some of them even becoming articulate. Never in the sense that they became the poets or anything of the land, but they learned a lot of Hawaiian and became able to express themselves very well.
and can I add to that? Actually, I did a letter for David Forbes. He brought it to me. It was a letter from Reverend Baldwin on Maui, written to his daughter in New York, in Hawaiian. And he says, I don't want you, and he says, you might be surprised, you know, you might be surprised to find this in Hawaiian, but I don't want you to forget the language of your homeland and the language you learned to speak so carefully. It was a great insight. These letters, rather than read about people, you get to hear them say what they're saying. It's a different window on the world of the past. Sorry. Questions? We have answers for everything.
I just want to thank you, Pukea. I mean, I'm probably the same generation as you and was there when you started Punana Leo, you know, and I always thought, wow, I wish my kids could go. And I never sent them. And now that I'm up there and I'm learning some language and I'm learning Olelo and coming to this kind of things, I just want to say from me, mahalo for showing the light to our keiki so they can continue to show it 7 generations down and that we can all be proud to be Hawaii. Mahalo.
There's so much to be proud of. I think Hawaii has the most wondrous history. And the more we can open that, the more people can appreciate it on the one thing. And I want to say, be proud of, learn Hawaiian. I mean, I am like the original cheerleader for Hawaiian language. But you don't have to become like Hawaiian scholar. You learn a little bit of Hawaiian, it opens doors. You just learn a little bit of Hawaiian. You could read a bunch of these letters. You can figure it out, fumble through it. You know, you don't have to become a master. But every step you take will open new pieces, and those pieces open new whole blocks, and those blocks open whole areas. So just stay at it. From this distance, you look quite young and fresh. But better you started now than later, right? Some of my students have been 80 years old, and they just decided, I'm going to speak Hawaiian before I die. So you just stay on the program. We're all good. Better late than later, right? Okay, questions?
Was that our last question?
That might have been our last question, and it wasn't a question, it was just a mahalo and a cheering section. Yep. But Jamie, you want to do a mahalo and we're done.
Say, don't forget to join us in April for our next event. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Mahalo nui to the Hawaiian Mission Houses Historic Site and Archives. And to Aulu. Mahalo, you folks. Mahalo to all the panelists.
Mahalo, you folks.
Mahalo.